7 thoughts that I've had recently about aviation, helicopters, airplanes, and I will try to get through this without rambling.
That's like autopilot, dude.
How do you fly a helicopter? Well, I'm going to show you. So the first thought I've had recently, and this is just like an action I've done, is I don't really like to teach vortex ring state or settling with power. Quickly, for anyone that doesn't know, vortex ring state is a state of flight where the helicopter settles into its own downwash and there are large vortexes produced. I'll throw a picture up right now. And vortex ring state happens when you are in powered flight, you have a low airspeed and a high rate of descent. So you're basically just descending vertically. Vortex ring state, it can kind of get confused with this concept called settling with power. But vortex ring state is a really dangerous position for the helicopter to be in. It has led to countless crashes. It's super dangerous and it's not a good thing. So it's really important that people know about it and are educated about it, and pilots, helicopter pilots, know about it. However, personally, due to the risk that it involves and how dangerous it is and how out of control the maneuver can get, I have slowly taught it less and less. There have been so many high-profile crashes of vortex ring state during training. Like, people were practicing vortex ring state and they got into it and they crashed and they died. That happens more than you would think. And the education style I want to give to my students, I believe that the best thing I can do for them is prevention. So during ground, talk about it a lot. I'll go up in the helicopter and I'll demonstrate to them the onset, how it can start to happen, but I will never get fully into vortex ring state. We're descending at like thousands of feet per minute. It's really uncomfortable, but I'll let them kind of get into it and then recover relatively quickly. I don't want to really be in vortex ring state. I want them to know how they can get into it, how they can get out of it. It's caused so many crashes that the risk is not worth the reward. So number 2 is kind of an interesting one, just a thought I've had recently, and I mean, it may be obvious to everyone else, but someone with absolutely no experience in a helicopter, there is no chance in my mind that they could land the helicopter. So I'll explain this. Like, let's say I'm up in the helicopter with someone with no experience, and for some reason I suffer like a medical emergency, like whatever, I pass out, I have a heart attack, a stroke, whatever. If there's a passenger next to me and they've got dual controls, I have zero faith that they can get the helicopter down. Someone with no experience, there's no way at all they can get the helicopter down. Now, the reason that I brought this up is, I mean, there's been articles recently, and I mean, this is just like a relatively common story that happens, but like a pilot is incapacitated for some reason, and a passenger with no aviation experience is able to land the helicopter or land the airplane, and they can get them down safely, land on the runway, and woo, everyone's fine. I genuinely do not believe that could happen in a helicopter. They're just so unstable. They're very confusing. The controls, once you know how to fly them, like, it makes sense, but for just someone that doesn't know, that's in an emergency situation, I don't think they could really handle that. Even like a student pilot with maybe 1 to 10 hours, I still don't think there's any hope. Maybe after 10 hours and they've practiced some approaches and they can kind of hover, they can get themselves down to the ground, but I really don't think anyone with no experience could land a helicopter, unlike an airplane. Number 3, flying at night is kind of fun, kind of cool. It's really fun over like a populated city like Los Angeles or Denver or Miami or New York City at night because it's very bright. Flying at night over remote areas, non-populated areas, is not fun. It's really not a great experience. If you're flying over a place that's not that populated, maybe with a road, but the rest of it is just dark wilderness, that's really sketchy and you can lose spatial awareness really quickly. And if you're gonna fly over like remote areas, you definitely need instruments. Like, there's been so many times where I've been flying like over like mountainous areas where, like, if you didn't have your instruments, or if I didn't have my instruments, I would be really terrified. I'd be shitting the bed. Yes, you need those night hours for the jobs, but really flying at night is not all that fun unless you're over like a bright city. Flying just like over mountainous territory is not that enjoyable. All right, number 4, airplanes are way more fun than I gave them credit for. Now, the path I took is not the typical path. Some of you guys might be on the same path as me, but I went straight from no aviation experience or knowledge into helicopters, and I just went full throttle on the helicopters, and I did not do airplanes. I never had anything against airplanes. They're fine, but helicopters, I was more attracted to helicopters and I wanted to fly helicopters, so I went that path. Now that I've got all the helicopter time I have and the experience and I've done all that, I'm starting to learn airplanes and work on my commercial, get ready for my commercial check ride. Airplanes are freaking awesome. Now, yes, they are more boring in some senses, but you can do really cool stuff with them, like steep turns, and some of the maneuvers are pretty cool. But like really landing an airplane, if you get like a really smooth, buttery flare touchdown in like a 172, that feels so good. Like it's really, maybe it's just because it's a new experience for me and I'm like so used to how helicopters fly and I've done so much in helicopters, but the airplane, it's really cool and it's really fun. I guess the takeaway from that is I should have give them more credit, but I'm very happy that I went helicopters and now I'm doing airplanes. But airplanes are pretty cool. Number 5 is something that I think everyone thinks, anyone that flies helicopters, is I wish helicopter pilots got paid more. I think the problem I have with it is when I compare like a commercial helicopter pilot to a commercial plane pilot, and specifically like the airlines. Like, so if you take like a commercial pilot at like the highest category of their flying, which is like the peak of their career, which is probably helicopter EMS, like search and rescue, law enforcement, maybe private flying or something, versus like airline pilot, which is typically the peak of their career. For a helicopter pilot, the peak of their career maybe is like $150 to maximum $200,000. But for like an airline pilot, it's like $200,000 to like $400,000 or $500,000. Like maybe it's like maybe a little bit less, but maybe like $200,000 to $400,000. So nearly double. I guess the problem I have is when you compare the two, like a helicopter pilot, I think there's typically more risk, typically doing like higher profile missions with more risks and unfavorable conditions, versus like the airline pilots. It's very standardized, relatively safe, like quite safe. I'm not sure what they do is worth double the amount of money. I get that they're flying very complex aircraft. The biggest factor is they are carrying hundreds of people with hundreds of people's lives at stake. I don't know if that necessarily quantifies double the amount of money. So that's something that just grinds my gears a little bit. If I was just looking at the helicopter pilot salary, I was like, oh, that's great. But then when you compare it to like a commercial airplane salary or commercial airliner salary, it's like, oh god. The next one, number 6, I have mixed thoughts about training at towered airports versus untowered airports. I like towered airports because there's someone to watch your back to avoid a mid-air collision. Mid-air collisions can still happen in controlled towered airspaces, but they're less likely, and there's someone looking at a radar or looking out the window that's helping you avoid other traffic, which I really like, versus like uncontrolled fields. I've been to some really busy uncontrolled fields to do helicopter training, and it's really sketchy because some pilots just don't talk on the radios, or they've got really poor radio proficiency. So you're kind of just flying around and you're doing your best to scan, but there's a chance that someone is going to fly into the pattern without a radio and there's going to be a mid-air collision. The biggest con with towered airports is like wait times and the controllers, and you can get in trouble. Like if you don't follow the rules, you can get in trouble. You can get pilot deviations, and that kind of sucks. But I think it's beneficial to have them watching your back. And I actually like both of them for different reasons, but kind of just a thought I've had. And then the last thought I've had recently is number 7, instructing in helicopters is safer than instructing in airplanes. And that may sound kind of backwards, that may sound kind of weird to some people, but I think helicopters, the instructor has more control and more capability and can get you out of more situations. Because you've got all 3-dimensional control, you can like climb immediately. Like as long as your engine is on and you've got power available, you can climb immediately out of a situation. You can bank pretty hard, you can yaw. In an airplane, it's relatively safe for the vast majority of maneuvers, but like specifically like when you're coming in on approaches and you're bleeding off that airspeed, like a go around in a helicopter is way safer than an airplane, and you can't stall in a helicopter, so you just have more options. I think they're generally safer to do training in. So that's it. I'll quit rambling. Those are 7 recent thoughts I've had. If you agree with any of them, leave a smiley face emoji down in the comments below. If you disagree, I want to hear about it down in the comments below. Let me know which of the 7 you disagree with and why. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the like button for all kinds of helicopter and aviation content, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.